welcome to High on Retro, the podcast with two guys who reminisce about the things that made up their childhood. I'm Nabil.
Oh, I'm Gavin.
You are indeed. So today we're going to carry on with our review of Jurassic Park. We covered the first half of the movie in the first episode, and this one we're going to pick off where the action starts. Should we give a quick summary of the first half of the movie?
Yes, let's.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay, so this rich old guy called John Hammond has somehow figured out how to clone dinosaurs, and he decides to make a theme park / zoo on an island off the coast of Costa Rica filled with these dangerous beasts. In the setting up of the zoo, one of the animals maims a worker, which then causes lawsuits from the worker's family. So the company hires a lawyer called Donald Gennaro to lead a bunch of experts, including Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, who are paleontologist, paleobotanist, respectively, on a tour of the park to check its safety and viability and sign off on it to get the lawsuit off of his back. They all go to the island, and I believe at this point we are now introduced to the two kids, Mr. Hammond's grandchildren, called Timmy and Lex. So they set off on a tour of the park, but it's disappointing because none of the dinosaurs show up. The Triceratops is sick. And then a storm comes in and they're forced to go back to the visitors center to wait out the storm and try again. And now at this point, Dennis Nedry, who is a disgruntled IT technician, programmer, whatever, he's decided to commit espionage by smuggling out some embryos and taking them down to the docks to be shipped off to this other company so that they can steal their research. And I believe he is currently, at this point in the story where we're at, he's just started his journey to the docks in the storm. Did I get all of that right?
You did, and he's now shut off the electricity to certain parts of the park so that he can get out. And
Yes.
he's left Ray Arnold to pick up the pieces to try and piece back the systems. And we've also missed out one other character, and that's Robert Muldoon,
of course,
the park gamekeeper.
Yes, the gamekeeper, yeah. The Quartermain.
Quartermain's a better that sounds more regal, doesn't it?
Quartermain, yeah, it was like an old fictional like character from some old novel, like the Africa Explorers thing. Yeah, sorry.
Perfect. So let's see, which scene did we get to?
I think he's stolen the embryos.
He's in his Jeep trying to escape to the East Docks.
Yes.
And then we cut to the tour where we have Dr. Alan Grant and Dr. Ian Malcolm in one car. And then we have the lawyer, Donald Gennaro, and the two kids, Lex and Timmy, in the other car. And the cars have now, because of the power cut, the cars have now stalled outside the T-Rex paddock.
Right. And we still have not seen the T-Rex yet, but they did put that goat there.
They did. So earlier on in the movie, they had a goat that was out near the fences to lure the T-Rex in order to make sure that there's some kind of spectacle in front of the visitors. But Timmy, while bored in the car, finds a pair of really funky looking goggles that turn out to be night vision goggles.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and he puts them on and starts to play around with them and notices that the goat is no longer attached to the tether that was keeping it to the ground inside the T-Rex paddock.
Uh-oh. Where's the goat? I do want to go back and just appreciate those night vision goggles, which as a kid was like the coolest thing you'd ever seen, because they had like these green lights and the lenses spun around automatically and they were bright yellow or something, and it was just like the coolest thing I'd ever seen.
They matched the decor of the Explorers. It was the same color scheme, wasn't it?
That seems too planned. I don't know who put so much thought into that.
But I think that was the point. But then it makes you wonder, will they be doing night tours, or is that for the, because it's in the tour vehicle, right? It's not in the staff Jeep.
That's true. Yeah.
It must have been put there for visitors. I'm guessing if it's poor visibility or something. But again, it seems like a really expensive thing to have in a car for something like that.
I do wonder if maybe some of the dinosaurs that they had or that they'd planned to have were nocturnal, and they were going to run like, nighttime tours.
True. Could be. I think I like that theory.
I'm happy with that. I'm good.
So Timmy's in the back of the car playing around with the goggles, and he pauses because all of a sudden he starts to feel something. And that's when we cut to the classic shot of the glass of water that's on the dashboard,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the ripples start forming on the glass.
Spooky.
Spooky. But the funny thing is, so it took them ages to figure out how to do that. So they tried various things to get the waveforms to form that way. And in the end, the way they did it was they had a guitar string that was tied underneath, and they had someone pluck it to cause the ripples.
It is crazy that like out of everything that they achieved in that movie in terms of technology, that was like one of the most difficult ones to accomplish.
But it's one of those weird things where you go, is that really worth it? But then it sticks in your mind so much. Even as a child watching that scene, it was just a big part of the drama and everything else.
I think looking back on it now, I think everybody involved would say it's definitely worth it.
I agree.
So that we see the water moving, and you hear that thump as well, that really sinister. It's very gentle at first, isn't it? It's like a thump, and then it like builds up.
And then do you see the T-Rex arm kind of come onto the fence?
Yeah, which is funny because you would think that its arms were so short that you wouldn't be able to see the arm without the body, but for some reason the body's not there. I don't know.
So I think they took some liberties with the T-Rex. So we talked about some of this in the previous episode where I think we were talking about things like the raptors and the Dilophosauruses, where they had taken some artistic licenses with the dinosaurs. And I believe it was the same thing with the T-Rex because, like exactly what you're saying, it's got really short, stubby arms, like comically short. And I think they made them a bit bigger because it would have just looked stupid.
Yeah.
And also, I think they made it more leaner and more agile and muscular than they really would. I think they were a lot more dumpier and in real life.
Yeah, it's funny because I remember from like my comic books and my pictures of them and stuff, they'd always come across as more like the classic Godzilla style, you know, like really upright and stuff. And then in Jurassic Park, it's like it looked like this, you know, fierce, dangerous, like mean lizard.
Yeah, exactly. Also, the other thing was that the whole crap about it not being able to see anything unless it was moving was completely made up as well.
Oh yeah, like so much else in that movie.
They tried to pass it off as, I think in the book, or I don't know if it was in the book or if it was something that they just kind of said offhand, but I think what they were saying is that the frog DNA kind of messed up and muddled things up. So it caused these side effects in the creatures that wouldn't have happened otherwise. Because if you think about it, it's going to be pretty sucky if like you can't see things if they don't move.
Yeah, that would be, do you know what though? Like you remember the Dilophosaurus? Like, can you imagine being a scientist and being like, okay, this is what a Dilophosaurus really looks like. And then that thing comes out instead with the frills and spitting venom. And you're like, oh, what have we created? Oh my God.
And then they still went, let's stick it in the park because, you know, at no point did they go, oh, this is a thing that spits acid. Maybe we should really think about whether we want this facing the public. But no, it's...
Nah, I bet they were like, dude, freaking sweet. Get it in a pen filled with too much vegetation. Let's go.
Yeah, exactly. We don't need proper barriers, you know. And we'll get to that bit because obviously we saw what it did to Nedry and his clothing, and you just think, a Ford Explorer, given the build quality, is probably not going to do much in terms of protecting the passengers from the thing.
Especially if they don't put locking mechanisms on the vehicle doors. I think we forgot to mention that before, but like that scene where they just get out of the moving vehicle and rush towards the Triceratops. And then you can hear Muldoon in the control room and he's like, how many times have I told you we needed locking mechanisms on the vehicle doors? And the whole time I'm watching it thinking like, is that not just common sense? Like, surely they must just come with locks on them anyway. Like, at no point did anybody think we should probably like lock these doors.
The thing is, it's the same with like the headlight bugs where the headlights wouldn't switch off. And I know this is meant to show like the flaws of Jurassic Park, but given that Ford was sponsoring the vehicles in this movie, it kind of reflects badly on them. There's these cars with
Yeah.
all these electronic bugs and things like that.
Yeah.
It's not a great sales pitch.
No, now Jeep, on the other hand, Jeep got a hell of an advertisement out of it because those Jeeps are incredible. It's all good. Let's get back to it.
Back to the movie. I'm trying to think. Do we see the leg of the goat next?
Yes, because Lex is like, "Where's the goat? Did he eat the goat?
Yes,
What's happened to the goat?" And then you see that shot from below her, looking up through the skylight, and you see the severed leg of the goat just slap like onto the thing.
Thud, and the blood trickling down.
Incredible.
And then we see the T-Rex head rear itself from behind the vegetation.
Yes, it's like he's poking his head out, just like seeing what's going on. Like, ooh, this is new. Hello. He just wants to play. He's like, hi.
And it's one of those things where if anyone hasn't seen the movies that made us on Netflix, then I really recommend watching that series. It's a great insight into into behind the scenes of certain movies. And the one on Jurassic Park is fantastic. They talk about things like the CGI for the dinosaurs, how it was new technology at the time, and basically Jurassic Park was at that pivot point between the old classic stop motion animatronic era and the new era of CGI. And I think that's why the movie works so well. It's the perfect blend of the two. It doesn't have an over-reliance on CGI, but the animatronics are like at its pinnacle as well.
I've heard it described as the first modern blockbuster movie.
Yeah, and I think it set the blueprint for what CGI could do. I think that and Terminator 2 were the first two movies that really pushed the boundaries of, okay, yeah, we can trust computers to do a realistic job of what we want.
Yeah.
But the great thing about it was they'd built the T-Rex model and they'd obviously built the animatronics and scaled them up so that they're roughly the same size and the same kind of design.
Right.
And what they didn't count on was that during the filming of the T-Rex scenes, where it's in the middle of a storm, so lots of rain, the water caused the latex foam that they'd used to make the T-Rex expand. So they ended up having this like bloated T-Rex that would actually malfunction, which was apparently really scary for the staff there.
Being assaulted by a T-Rex sized blobfish just coming out at you, just all swollen and like, terrifying.
I'd like to think that it's basically describing how, as the T-Rex arrives in the 20th century, it now faces the same ailments as a 20th century human being, where it's probably got water retention, high sodium diet. It's probably suffering from the early onset of diabetes. And
how probably struggling to breathe. How could they even breathe? There's way less oxygen in the atmosphere now than there was
that's very true
200 million years ago. I don't know how they breathe. They'd probably just all immediately die.
Let's just say frog DNA. I feel like that's the get out of jail free card, right? It's like, oh, it's a frog DNA. Yeah. Why does it do this? Frog DNA. Why does it spit venom? Frog DNA. Yeah. There's some frogs that spit venom. That's why.
Well, Nabil, you can't prove it's not frog DNA. So,
no, I can't.
The argument stands.
I stand corrected. But yeah, so they ended up having to actually change the CGI model to make it plumper, shall we say, to match the animatronic that came about as a result of the water.
Oh.
And you do notice it, like when it gets to the Gallimimus scenes where it's running around in the fields, and at the end, it's definitely a slimmer, more muscular T-Rex. Although we could probably say that now that it's free from its paddock, it's running around the fields, it's eating good food and not salted goats that are like placed in front of it.
Salted? It was alive.
Garnished goats that are being presented to
They just dump in, just sprinkling some like some coriander on top of it.
Curried goat for its eating pleasure.
Just sprinkle some curry powder on it. Get out in that field.
Lots of butter. It's So I think the T-Rex head appears, and that's when Gennaro makes his dash for the bathrooms.
Oh yeah, he absolutely freaks out and just runs and leaves the kids in the car by themselves
with the door wide open.
Yes.
And that's when they slam the door, and I think that's what gets the T-Rex's attention.
Yes, because I don't know why they thought it was necessary to do that, but apparently that was important. Close the door.
Well, I mean, I can kind of see it. If you've got this huge hulking dinosaur that is potentially a threat, I'd close the door as well.
Yeah.
To me, that's okay. What doesn't make sense is Lex with the light.
Oh yeah, I'll just turn a flashlight on because I need to be able to see. I don't know.
And she's 11. She's meant to be 11 in the movie. This isn't a 3-year-old, 5-year-old, whatever. You know, this is. She should have more common sense than that.
We'll blame it on the parents, Nabil. There we go.
I will blame it on Hammond being the grandparent.
Yeah, absolutely. I will blame everything on Hammond.
Starting the cycle of idiocy that is carried through the generations of the Hammond family.
And probably continues way after this.
So Gennaro's done a runner. The T-Rex has obviously been attracted by the noise and the new things outside his paddock, takes down the wires and steps outside, giving its infamous roar.
Yes. And we should mention as well, that Gennaro runs into a toilet, a porta potty.
Mm-hmm.
Does he not?
He does, but they're official Jurassic Park porta potties. These aren't temporary things. These are proper visitor toilets that are very clean.
Yes. So can withstand a hurricane.
Can we get back to the hurricane at some point? Because that was one really weak hurricane. Because by the next day, it was kind of sunny. Everything was dry. There wasn't a lot of wind. I mean, the kids and Alan Grant survived out in the wilderness during the middle of a storm, apparently.
And I don't think anything was broken or damaged, was it, as well? So
no. So did they just evacuate everyone off the island for no reason?
I don't know. It feels like it. It feels like everybody just scarpered. But anyway, Gennaro's locked himself in the toilet. This industrial strength toilet. It's like a bunker. And you were about to describe the T-Rex stepping out onto the road for the first time.
It does, and it's intrigued by the cars, and then we get the scene with Lex with the flashlight, which attracts the dinosaur towards the first car.
Yeah, the roar that the T-Rex lets out as well.
Yeah.
What a sound hearing that for the first time.
You need to look it up because there's some really interesting information from the sound engineer for Jurassic Park, and he was kind of describing the different animal sounds he put together for the different dinosaurs. And apparently for the T-Rex roar, I think he said that the main sound was produced by a baby elephant.
Ah, the elephant. Yeah. Wasn't there like an elephant and a lion and something? He mixed a bunch of stuff together, I think.
And he said specifically that for large menacing sounds like the T-Rex, that smaller animals work better. So if you take the sound of a smaller animal and then slow it down, that has more impact than the sound of a bigger animal.
Oh. That's interesting. Sound design is very fascinating.
Yeah, and that's a movie where, if you think about it, there's no reference point. You don't know how these animals sound. He basically took certain things from real life and applied it to what he thinks would work for the animals. So I think there's the clicking sound that the Dilophosaurus makes that I think was brought in from a swan. Because of the way the neck moves and stuff, he was like, oh, that's very kind of bird swan-like. So I think he took elements like that from it.
Yeah, and it's funny because I remember recently they've started writing articles about how they've discovered that according to the shape of their skulls and stuff, they would sound more like birds. Which is funny because if you remember the way that the velociraptors sound, the noise they make, it's like a goose honking. Yeah. It's like a honking goose sound, which is amazing because at that time nobody knew that they were like going to sound like birds. It's crazy.
I think Jurassic Park came around that time where the theory about birds started to get traction.
Yeah.
Because I remember before that it was very much, oh, it's all lizards. And around that period, it did switch to birds, and now it's the really uncool, oh, they were just covered in feathers now.
Yeah, they kind of lose their edge. Well, to be fair though, like it's like, you know, if I took all my skin off, I would be utterly terrifying. But so like you strip all the feathers off of a T-Rex, and it's like this leathery, like rawr, with the teeth and stuff. It's terrifying. But you give it a bunch of lovely plumage, and then it becomes a majestic beast.
I think they're still trying to figure out to what level they were covered in feathers, because they're saying it might be similar to something like elephants, where they have like elephants have hair because they're mammals, but it's very light hair, and they shed a lot of it as they get into adulthood. So they think that maybe the same thing happened with things like T-Rexes. That even though it might have feathers, it's probably like very small, very tiny feathers on certain parts of the body, not all over. And then
It's crazy.
There's also potential that as it got bigger, then it would lose a lot of those. So I mean, who knows? Until we clone them with frog DNA, we'll never know.
Well, come on, we're waiting. Let's go. Elon Musk,
come on, Musk,
yeah.
Work with Jeff Bezos and make it happen.
Oh God, it'd be terrifying. Corporate dinosaurs. I couldn't. No. They'd end up putting like machine guns on their heads and sending them off to war or something.
Fantastic. So now we get to the part where the whole thing kicks off now. The T-Rex has its attention caught by the car with the two kids in, and it comes crashing through the plexiglass.
Terrifying. I still maintain that this is part horror movie, because some of the scenes in it are so terrifying, and the suspense it builds up with is textbook horror movie.
You're right. It does have the same beats. When you first mentioned it to me, I thought, oh, is it really a horror movie? Because it's a PG action adventure kind of thing. But then you're right. Every beat is like a horror movie beat. It's the way it builds things up, the jump moments, the tension. It's classic horror.
It is. It's terrifying. And this was for kids. Amazing, the 90s.
Oh, times have changed. So the T-Rex head comes crashing down, and then I think it flips over the car.
Yes, you're right. Yeah, it starts flipping the car over,
and the car's flipped over, and the T-Rex steps on top of the Explorer, crushing it into the ground, and the poor kids are trapped underneath as the car kind of squashes down on them.
Yes,
and so this is where the mix of CGI and animatronics is so cool, because there's obviously scenes where the T-Rex is kind of bumping against the car, which is animatronics. And then there's the bit where it kind of steps onto the car. And now with the technology we can kind of see that the T-Rex is CGI. There's a lot of parts now where you can kind of tell where it's CGI and where it's not.
Yeah.
I think the T-Rex fares better than a lot of the other dinosaurs because of the scene at nighttime with the rain. It masks a lot of the animation, and I think that was done on purpose as well. But there was a video on YouTube that was kind of explaining the CGI, and they were mentioning the bit where the T-Rex climbs on top of the Explorer and bites the tire of the car. Yes. And these two graphic designers are talking about how they're trying to guess what's CGI, and they say, okay, well, the T-Rex is obviously CGI. The tire to them looks really fake, and that looks CGI. But what they found later on was that the actual Explorer was CGI as well.
Oh, really?
And it blows my mind. Watching it back now, I'm blown away. I mean, if no one had told me that, I would never have known. And only by looking on like a really high quality version can you really tell that it's CGI. And to think that this was done in '93 is just, it's just crazy.
That is wild. I had no idea that the car was CGI as well.
Like the way they go back and forth between the CGI and the real model, it's almost seamless in certain ways.
Yeah, that's better than, you remember the second Matrix movie? That was worse than this, and this was made like 10 years earlier or something.
Okay, well, this is going to be like a real tangent because now we're talking about other movies. But there's the scene with Agent Smith. I think it's the big Neo versus Agent Smith fight where there's all the Agent Smiths lining up. Yeah. I thought they were all CGI, but they weren't. They were all stunt doubles with Agent Smith masks on.
You're joking.
No.
How have they made it? They made it look like CGI. Anyway, we're getting off topic. That is ridiculous.
It's I mean, it's just insane, isn't it? Okay, so the kids are now getting squished into the mud by the T-Rex, and Alan Grant finally decides to do something, and he finds a box of flares at the back of the car. lights one, and runs out to try and attract the attention of the T-Rex.
Wait a second. These are supposed to be tourist vehicles. Why do they have flares and night vision goggles and all kinds of stuff in the back? Well, is there a shotgun in the trunk as well, just in case?
So yeah. Alan Grant runs out, manages to attract the attention of the T-Rex, and it starts chasing him. And we get the classic scene where he throws the flare to distract it away from the scene, and Ian Malcolm steps out to become the hero with another flare.
Dumbass. He has no idea what's going on. He doesn't know anything about dinosaurs. He's like, I'll just do what he did. Oh, God.
Completely the wrong time. Now, the interesting thing is, so there was an interview with Jeff Goldblum where he kind of explained that his character was meant to kind of do a Gennaro, where he was meant to run away from the scene completely, and then get chased by the T-Rex. And on his way for filming, he thought, okay, maybe my guy could be like the hero. You know, he's got kids. He's obviously worried about the kids because he mentions earlier on when Alan Grant goes to check on them, he asks him, but what about the kids? Mm-hmm. So he thought it kind of makes it more believable if he does something heroic. And I think it kind of fits that he does something heroic, but it's also misguided. I think that's a very Ian Malcolm thing to do.
The heroic dumbass.
Yeah, exactly. So he apparently pitched it to Steven Spielberg, and Spielberg asked him, so how do you picture the scene going? He described it and he went, okay, cool, let's put that in the movie. Goldblum also tells the story of how Martin Ferrero, who plays Donald Gennaro, on the way to a shoot, they were having a conversation, and Ferrero goes, so what do you think if my character survives in the movie similar to what happens in the book and your character dies? And Goldblum was kind of laughing about this, going, actors do this all the time. Like, you get into the character, you love your character, this is your thing. You want to do something with them. And I think looking back on it, Gennaro really got the short end of the stick. Like, he's such a whiny, hateable character. He's such a coward that I feel sorry for poor Martin Ferrero, who's trying to bring something else and an extra dimension to the character.
Yeah, they did cast him as like a sort of stereotype of a weaselly, whiny lawyer type.
Yeah, exactly. And I think part of it is the way he plays characters, because it was the same thing in Miami Vice when he plays Izzy. He's got that kind of awkward, nerdy kind of thing going on anyway. So I think it just fits that kind of style. But he wanted to change things up, and that didn't happen. So getting back to the situation now. So Ian Malcolm is running away. The T-Rex goes straight into him, throws him through the Portaloo area, and reveals a poor Donald Gennaro sat on a toilet shaking in fear.
The only scene I remember from watching it in the cinema.
Totally made for kids, isn't it? The bit where he totally picks him up from the toilet.
See, it's great because I was just literally just talking about how it's basically a horror film, and now we've got this moment of a dude just sat on the toilet. Does he actually have his pants pulled down?
I don't think he is. I think it's more of a case of, because I don't think he's gone to relieve himself.
That would be really weird.
You gotta go when you gotta go, I think it was just the unfortunate thing of he was trying to hide from the situation and ended up getting caught short. Which, given how long it takes for the T-Rex to come out, if he'd just run away, he might have had a better chance of surviving. That's
probably what I would have done. I would have just put my head down and run as fast as I could and just prayed to every god. Like that guy from The Mummy, where he's pulling all the different religious symbols out and like praying to each different one of them. That would be me.
So while this is all happening, Alan Grant has made his way to the first Explorer to try and pull out the kids from underneath the Explorer. He manages to get Lex out, but poor Timmy is still trapped underneath. And then we get another classic scene, which is where you see Lex look up and then give out a huge scream. And that's basically what they hired her for, because apparently for the auditions, they were looking for a girl who could scream really well. And I think it's Ariana Richards is the name of the actress.
Ariana Richards, yes.
Yeah. And apparently she got the part because during the auditions, Steven Spielberg's then wife was sleeping on a sofa in another room. And apparently the scream that she gave out was enough to wake her up and come running to see what was going on. She was that worried. And so he was like, yep, that's it. You've sold it to me. And
it's a good scream.
It is a pretty good scream. She does a good job of...
It is an excellent scream.
of letting that rip. So now the T-Rex is spinning the car around, decides to push it off the edge of its paddock.
Yes.
And this is where Alan Grant and Lex decide to run out from behind the car and grab onto one of the wires or ropes or whatever that was kind of constructing the fence, and try and make their way down to the bottom of the paddock.
Which is funny, and I know that you might have been about to mention this, but the height of that ledge, that's the exact same spot that the T-Rex came out of a few seconds ago. Now it's this like 100-foot drop or something. What?
It doesn't make sense, right? Because that's where the goat was. And the bit where you see the goat rise out of the ground, it's on level ground. And now, yeah, exactly that. It's so far down that the Explorer actually has a way to travel before it hits the top of the tree. And then it has to make its way down the tree as well. That is like one of the... I don't
That's
understand.
such a belief. Come on, Spielberg. Come on.
Spielberg. We expected better of you.
I didn't specifically recognize it, but I always remember having this feeling of like something doesn't feel right, like spatially in that scene. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, it just doesn't add up, right?
Yeah, it's like a weird feeling that you get.
So yeah, the T-Rex pushes the car over. The car is stuck in the tree with Timmy inside, and Lex and Alan Grant have escaped to the bottom of the paddock.
Yes.
Which you now assume is the bottom of the paddock.
It's got to have a bomb somewhere.
I think this is where we cut to the Dilophosaurus scene.
With Nedry, because he's driving and he crashes, or have we already passed?
No. So yeah, that's exactly it. So Nedry is... his glasses are steaming up and the windscreen wipers are failing to keep the windscreen free of rain, and he's struggling to see as he makes his way across the park, and he goes crashing into the sign for the East Dock, which is where he's meant to be headed, and as a result he's now confused and lost as to where he's supposed to be going.
Yes.
And then he eventually runs off the side of a road, goes crashing through a fence, and finds himself on a precipice on top of a mini waterfall.
Yeah.
And he climbs out of the Jeep because now the Jeep is stuck because it's only a 2-wheel drive Jeep. I think they'd make this thing's 4-wheel drive.
Just rookie mistake after rookie mistake.
But luckily they put winches on them at least, so that's a plus.
Well, there you go. So problem solved. What more do you need?
So Nedry climbs out the car, slips on the rocks, which has a great comical slipping sound, like it's taken something out like a Looney Tunes movie or something.
Somebody just dropped a banana peel right at that spot. It's like, whoop!
It's genius. I love it. And as he goes sliding to the bottom, he sees another sign to the East Docks. So he knows that he's now back on the right track. He just needs to get his Jeep down from the top to the bottom. So he decides to tie the Jeep to a large tree in order for it to winch itself down. By this point, he's lost his glasses. But that's all right, because he can afford more glasses now with all the money he's going to make from selling the Emperors.
He's like, meh, I can afford more glasses. I don't know where I got the accent from. That was weird. I'm sorry.
And that's when he runs into the Dilophosaurus.
Yeah, see, he hears it first, doesn't he? He hears that little, like, it's like a little, I don't know. Sorry, that was terrible.
It's a very playful sound, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. And he hears it like jumping from bush to bush and stuff. Yeah, I think he's like wrapping his cable around the tree, and then it peeks out from behind a tree at him or something.
Yeah, exactly. But he dismisses the dinosaur. It's like, oh, you're just a tiny little thing. He treats it like a dog, basically. And he does try to play fetch with it. So he throws a stick, and
this is the bit where he's like, stick, stupid, stick. And then he's like, no wonder you guys are extinct.
Great line, isn't it?
Incredible.
And that's when Nedry verbally abuses it. And I suppose these dinosaurs have now picked up emotion in human voices. and it's not happy.
Oh, well, you wouldn't be, would you? Somebody said you should be extinct.
I would take that personally too.
Oh, very personal.
No, I think it's just hungry because obviously they've not been fed for a while. Yeah, that's when we reveal the secret surprise of the Dilophosaurus.
Yeah. It unveils its glorious plumage.
That's right. It unveils its frilly neck thing. It does the hissing, rattlesnakey kind of sound, and then it spits acidic goop all over Nedry.
It looks like the same thing that the gremlin turned into at the end of Gremlins, you know, where it like goes, it's like this green pea soup thing.
Which again, you know, obviously we've watched this movie a few times, but for this podcast, I was basically like recapping it, and I had it on in the background while I was doing something, and the sound effects for that scene are just the squelching, bubbly sounds.
Oh yeah.
It's like classic horror lab kind of stuff, you know, like mad scientists making concoctions in a lab kind of thing.
You can imagine him like in the sound studio with just throwing like soggy cabbage at the floor and recording it, like just all kinds of weird experiments. The sound design is absolutely incredible in this film. It is.
It is. It makes up a lot of it, doesn't it?
It does. It triggers so many different feelings in you when you watch it. It can make you feel like it's so tense. The suspense, it's amazing.
And I think that's a very like 90s horror movie thing as well, right? It's like that balance between horror and comedy. And it's the same thing with the T-Rex. Like you've got this serious T-Rex moment, but then you change the beat with the comedy scene with the toilet.
Yeah.
The great thing about Jurassic Park is it gets the balance of that right. So it's getting scary, it's getting horror-like, but then it just does enough to kind of bring it back and make it a bit silly and funny without going too far for little kids.
Yeah.
And then it gets the seriousness going again. It just finds the right balance between the two. It's not overly stupid, but at the same time, it's not overly scary and dramatic and serious.
It's very well paced as well. It never feels rushed, or it never feels like it's dragging. It always just feels like it moves along at a perfect pace.
Unlike this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Man. All right, so what's next?
So Nedry's been covered in this like acidic spit stuff, and now his clothes. Now this is a proper horror movie scene, right? Where his clothes are all like they're melting, and he's got all this stuff on his hands and things, and his eyes are covered in all this crap.
Yeah.
And somehow he managed to make his way to the top of the waterfall, which I don't know how. And I think they kind of glossed that over because no one wants to see Nedry struggle up that.
It's fine. It's minor.
And then he gets in the Jeep and he hears the hissing, rattling sound coming from his right side.
And he makes the worst mistake of his life. He turns around to see what the noise is.
And gets a face full of acid.
Gets right in the eyes, boy.
I wonder if he could see, or whether it's just because, like the instinct of where you hear a noise and you turn towards the noise.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was that. But one thing I remember from the book when I first read it was they go into that scene into more detail. I think that's the one where it gets really gory, where it kind of talks about how the Dilophosaurus starts like opening up his stomach while he's still alive.
Yes, and eating him alive. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And as a kid, it's like, oh, that's so cool. Oh, why did they cut that out from the film? I was like, I'd probably scream if I saw that in the movie, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a bit more visceral when it's right in front of your face, isn't it?
But yeah, I was just taken aback by that. I was like, oh my God, that's disgusting. Oh. Okay, so then we cut back to Dr. Grant and the kids. And
yes.
Poor Timmy is stuck up in the tree, and Dr. Grant figures this is the best time to kind of clean himself up before he begins his rescue mission.
Just have a quick face wash.
Exactly, right? Because that's what you want to do. And he tells Lex to stay there while he goes to go and rescue Timmy. And Lex is traumatized by Gennaro and is like, he left us. And Dr. Grant goes, but that's not what I'm gonna do.
Oh yeah.
And his delivery of that line is just genius.
Suddenly he cares about kids now. He likes kids now. He's
like,
cool.
Yeah, this is my moment. I'm Dr. Alan Grant, damn it. Yeah.
He's the hero that they needed.
He's gone from like brushing dinosaur bones now to showing people what he's made of.
He goes back to the car, right, to save Timmy.
Where he pulls Timmy out the car, and basically Timmy is scared of heading down the tree. Because why wouldn't you be scared? Poor kid has never climbed trees before. He even mentions that when Grant's like, oh, it's just like, didn't you have a tree house? He's like, no, what do you think I am? My granddad's made a park full of dinosaurs, but he never built me a tree house,
That tracks. That sounds about right. I was just going to say that probably at this point, both of these kids are in shock. Yep. They're like they're going to be suffering from PTSD for a long time after this.
Yeah, I mean, in hindsight, maybe going through the parents' divorce was the better option for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, it's just terrible, but that's Jurassic Park for you. So, yeah, Grant is trying to coax Timmy to come down the tree, and then he's interrupted by the creaking sound of the car as the weight of the car is slowly pressing down the tree, and it starts to make its way down the branches.
As I believe he's like, "Go, Timmy, go!" or something really cheesy.
Timmy, go! Yeah. And then we get another classic horror kind of thing as the car creeps down and just stops at the right moment, hitting a branch just above their heads, blah blah blah, and eventually they make it down at the bottom, but then the car's coming down too quickly for them to actually get out of the way, so they just position themselves so that the car falls right on top of them, but they land in the cavity where the passenger seats are.
Yes, and this is where we get that immortal line from Tim. He says, "Well, we're back in the car again."
But we're out of the tree. It's brilliant, isn't it?
So some of the comedy in this movie is incredible.
Well, I feel in the second half, like the one-liners started to pick up pace.
Yeah.
And they started to really have that, the snappy kind of, especially for me and Malcolm.
Yeah, it might have been in his contract. He was like, I want 80% of all the snappy one-liners.
Speaking of Malcolm, I think that's the next scene, right? I think it's the rescue scene where Hammond asks Muldoon to go and get his grandkids.
Yes.
And Ellie Sattler, who tries to save everyone in every situation, she's like, I'm not going to let Muldoon do that on his own. No, I'm going to help him too.
I do want to mention that this is a bit where Hammond says, Mr. Muldoon, would you please take a gas-powered Jeep and go out? Which is funny because that's not the first time that he mentions gas-powered Jeeps. And it struck me as so weird because it's like, well, what else would you run a Jeep on? Like,
well, the funny thing you mentioned that, because for me as a child, and I don't know what it was like for you, but growing up in the UK, we don't call it gas, we call it petrol.
Yes. Yeah.
When he keeps mentioning gas-powered Jeeps, I'm like, is this like some kind of special Jeep that runs on like hydrogen gas or something like that? Like, is this why he keeps mentioning it? Is this like not a petrol Jeep? Is this, something else?
Yeah, it runs on helium or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, but I think basically Sattler doesn't want to hang around with Hammond and Dr. Arnold, which I don't blame.
I don't blame her.
I mean, she's a paleobotanist, right? And you're stuck with an old guy who's responsible for everything going to shit and a dude who chain smokes like nothing else. I mean, I wouldn't want to be stuck in that room either.
What a party that would be.
So it's the thing about movies, right? You don't get the smell of stuff. So I remember when they introduced the smoking ban in restaurants, and I don't think we noticed like how different things were until you actually go to a restaurant where they allow smoking now, and it just hits you.
Yeah, it's crazy that that used to be normal.
And can you imagine what the smell of an office with Nedry and like
Nedry's sweating away. Arnold's chain smoking furiously in the corner.
And Dr. Hammond would have like that old man smell or whatever it is. Like.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Oh, it'd be horrible, wouldn't it? And Muldoon as well, because, Muldoon's this nature guy. I'm sure he doesn't he probably does bathe. Let's not put him down too much. But yeah, I can't see him like showering himself with like Brute afterwards or something.
No, he definitely has that like musky smell, but I bet he smells like cow shit or something like that. You know, like the earth. He smells like the earth.
Yeah, Muldoon and Ellie Sattler jump into a gas-powered Jeep and they rush off to the T-Rex paddock to basically try and rescue everyone. Now, this is the other thing that kind of bugs me, right? So if you think about it, they don't know what's going on with the T-Rex and everything else. They've taken one Jeep and you've got the Alan Grant, Ian Malcolm, Gennaro, and the two kids.
Right.
How are you going to fit everyone on a Jeep? Like, you're assuming everyone's alive, right? So
yeah, well, because you're saying that obviously the camera feeds must be down, so they don't know that the T-Rex has escaped.
And they don't, because Hammond asks them to bring them back our grandkids, and when they get there, they're trying to figure out where everyone is, right? So the plan was to rescue everyone and bring everyone back in one Jeep.
Yeah, it's John Hammond.
Spend no expense.
He's like, here you go, here's one Jeep, go rescue like 20 people with it. Like,
maybe Ellie Sattler could have taken a Jeep herself, and then you have two Jeeps. Or maybe Hammond should have gotten a Jeep himself.
He does what he always does, which is not get his hands dirty. Just send other people to do it for him and then claim that it was his idea all along because he told him to go out into the park and rescue his grandkids. Aren't I such a good grandpa? And I've just gone off on another anti-Hammond rant.
Yeah, we'll get more into his behaviors as we go along this.
I could do an entire 3-part episode on how much I hate John Hammond.
Which we love Richard Attenborough and his performance, but yeah, John
absolutely.
Hammond, the character. Oh
no, Richard Attenborough was incredible. Love him. John Hammond.
Curse you, Hammond. Yeah, so now Ellie Sattler and oh my god, I forgot his name. Robert Muldoon.
Muldoon.
Yeah, they've noticed that one of the cars has gone missing. They're both in a panic and they can't find anyone because obviously everyone's kind of disappeared. And they see the broken Portaloo and they rush towards it. And there's that classic scene where they're both inspecting different parts of the rubble. And
is it the one where he's like, I think this was Gennaro, and then the other person says, I think this was too?
Yeah, that's it. And then we hear Ian Malcolm groan, and that's when they rush towards him, which begs the question, when they go over to him, he's quite visible.
But he is wearing all black. So,
So the fact that they can find parts of Gennaro, but Ian Malcolm's just like lying there. It's like, okay.
Maybe they saw him and they were like, oh no, not that guy.
I think is that the bit where they go, any chance of moving him, and he goes, please chance it.
Yes. Please chance it.
But I think what they do is like they remove the rubble and they see that he's applied a tourniquet to himself, and I just I just like to think that he's like injured. He gets up, puts his tourniquet on, and then goes, I know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna unbutton my shirt and just like lie here. Sattler will be coming. Let me just look sexy. Chicken nurse me back down.
I better pretend to be really injured.
And yeah, so then that's when they start to look for everyone else, and they can't find Dr. Grant and the kids. Ellie somehow makes her way down to the Borum super quick.
Oh yeah, she's like, I found the other car, it's over there or whatever, and then she just climbs down in a flash.
And all this time we hear the roar of the T-Rex, and Poy and Malcolm is just sat there
like just not having a good time
on the Jeep talking to himself.
Again, that's chaos theory.
And I think there's this bit where he's just muttering to himself and he goes, I'm fairly alarmed here, in this like really calm voice.
It's just pure Goldblum.
Yeah, so that's when Muldoon and Sattler run back and they hop in the Jeep just in time as the T-Rex bursts through the trees behind them.
Yes.
Then we get some really awesome reaction shots from Laura Dern, because I don't think I picked up on this the first time round, or like the first few times I watched the movie, but her character has never seen the T-Rex in real life, and this is her first experience of it, is this thing bearing down on her in a Jeep. So when she's like going, shit, 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 you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
That's pretty rough. Yeah. It's terrible.
Whereas Ian Malcolm's like, oh, I've been here before. I've been here and done this. Like,
he's like, yeah, this is old news now.
This is
already been mauled by a T-Rex. It's no biggie.
And Robert Muldoon really needs to learn how to put his foot down, because he's really trundling along in that Jeep.
Yeah, and they said what T-Rex can run at, what was it, like 32 miles an hour or something? Yeah. Can a Jeep not do faster than that? That seems...
Well, I think what happens is a point where Malcolm falls back and he hits the gear stick, which obviously stops him from like picking up pace or something like that.
Okay.
So I think that's part of it. But yeah, I think he's just driving really slow.
Oh yeah, because he's not driving an automatic, is he? So he'd have to like step on the clutch, like move the gears every time.
But yeah, can you imagine like trying to recall that scene? Recall all those instructions when you're being chased out by a T-Rex.
Ridiculous. I'd rather do like battlefield surgery or something.
Do we get another classic like Ian Malcolm line here where he says, must go faster?
Oh yeah, must go faster, must go faster.
And the other thing that I thought was really awesome was the whole thing with the side mirror, where you've got a label at the bottom that say objects in the mirror may appear
maybe closer than they
actually. Yeah. And it's funny because I've never seen that on a wing mirror in the UK, but I think I have seen it in the US.
Yes, over here they're on almost everybody's right hand mirror.
And every time I see one, it just reminds me of Jurassic Park now, because
me too.
And then Muldoon finally gets it into gear and all the panic, and they start pulling away. And Muldoon gives this really cool little smirk, like, I beat you, T-Rex, kind of thing. And Ian Malcolm has to get in one more line with, do you think they'll have that on the tour?
Oh, God. I forgot about that.
Because he hasn't had enough one-liners in this whole scene.
Like, all right, you've made your point, Ian. Calm down. We know you're the smartest guy in the room.
So then we get back to Grant and the kids, and they hear the roar of the T-Rex, probably because it's chasing everyone else that's with all the commotion going on at the top. And so they decide to climb up a tree to avoid any more dinosaurs that might be coming to attack them.
Yes.
And that's where we get this really scenic view of like a sunset or something. Or is it a sunrise? I think it's a sunrise, isn't it? Because
I think it's the sunrise, because it was already nighttime before, wasn't it?
Yeah. And you see these like brachiosaur necks just rising up above the trees into the clouds. It's all very picturesque and lovely. Grant tries to show off by calling them over with his brachiosaurus call, which he's never tried before, or somehow.
I don't know. He's like, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Well, the thing that gets me, right, he mentions it, one of the kids mentions something about them singing, and there's like this melodic kind of thing going on between them, and then Grant's like, oh yeah, I'll make that impression and call them over, and it just sounds like someone puking on a night out. It's just like it's kind of like that. And somehow that worked.
It worked. Yeah. You got to hand it to him. He's the Steve Irwin of dinosaurs.
I bet they were just pissed off. Can you imagine, like, you're just singing away happy, blissful sing-along session, and the next thing you know, you just hear like this vomiting sound in the background somewhere.
Well, I mean, you would turn to look at it, wouldn't you? You'd be like, what the fuck was that?
But that makes you think, though, like, if Hammond had just stuck to the veggie dinosaurs, things would be very different, because all the plant-eating dinosaurs seem to be like super friendly. And this always kind of bugged me in some kind of way. It's a case of, I know plant-eating dinosaurs don't eat meat, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel threatened by other things.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to be. It's just like, oh, if you're a herbivore, you're just nice and friendly and kind. And if you're a meat eater, then you're a dick and you just want to eat everything. But surely the plant eaters would get scared as well, or like freak out or react, you know.
The Stegosaurus would be rampaging around,
Yeah.
messing shit up.
It's like if you approach a goat in the wild, it's not going to be friendly to you. I mean, that's not going to eat you, right? It's going to eat grass. That's what goats do. But it's going to look at you with its weird square pupils and kick the shit out of you. So, especially for like these dinosaurs where they've probably never experienced. Well, I suppose they've had the experience with the scientists, and John Hammond's been there for every birth now, I suppose. So
yeah,
maybe they're more used to people.
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't chance it. I would assume the worst.
What happens next?
Where are we? What did we just talk about?
They're in the trees. Oh, they're about to go to sleep in the trees, aren't they?
Yes, they fall asleep in the trees.
And then we cut to the shots of the merchandising area of the visitor center, where you've got like a range of soft toys and lunchboxes. So yeah, we go from the merch stand and it pans to a dining room table where your favorite character Hammond is sat at the end. This scene is just made for you. And he's sat at the end shoveling ice cream into his face because the fridge has obviously gone off now and the ice cream's all melting. Yeah. Ellie Sattler walks in after her shocking experience with the T-Rex and everything else, sits down, and Hammond tells her about the ice cream melting.
Oh, yeah.
And she's like, and Ian Malcolm's okay, by the way. We've given him a morphine drip. He's going to survive if you care about that at all.
He's definitely a man who's got his priorities straight.
Yeah.
Ice cream, just everything else except what needs to be done.
And you'd expect him to be kind of panicked and worried about what's going on, but he just tells himself they're with a paleontologist, they're with Dr. Grant, and who better to get the children through the park than a dinosaur expert?
I mean, he's got a point. That is a good point.
But maybe he should have hired more dinosaur experts when he was building the park. That would have also been a
maybe, John, if you'd listened to the goddamn experts, we wouldn't be in this position where they needed a freaking dinosaur expert to lead them through a danger park full of savage lizards.
And then he gives us his little sob story about the flea circus, doesn't he?
Yeah, which raises an interesting question. How did he get so rich? I know it's not important to the story, but it's funny because the only thing he mentions about his past investments is like a zoo, an African safari zoo, and a flea circus or something. And it's like, I know you didn't get rich off of flea circuses. So what did I think he inherited his wealth, and he dresses like somebody who has a long line of like wealth going back generations. Do you know what I mean? It's very fancy looking.
It's very Man from Del Monte, isn't it?
It's very Colonel Sanders / Man from Del Monte.
And then he goes on how the problem with the park is the automation and how he's going to fix things next time. I think Ellie Sattler kind of just has a go at him, saying the problem was that you didn't respect the power. Didn't respect the power of the dinosaurs and the park and everything else.
This is a great moment as well, because up until this point, Ellie's been sort of very agreeable with John Hammond. She hasn't really spoken out against him, really. But at this point, you can tell she's just sick of it. She's like, cut the shit, John.
Yeah.
Like, I'm tired of you always blaming everything else for your problems. Do you know what I mean? So she's she's like, I didn't have enough respect for that power and it's out now or something.
Yeah. And then similar to like a mic drop, she just reaches for the ice cream and like, takes a spoonful. But the funny thing is that the ice cream's actually miles away. So I don't know like how she actually got there or what like invisible ice cream she managed to get to.
Doesn't he she takes like a little bit of ice cream and she's like, it's good or something like that. And then Hammond says, spared no expense.
Yeah, he did. And that's his last spared no expense in the movie. And what a great one it is as well.
Oh god! The way he says it, like he says it sarcastically that time, so you know that he's just like,
it's finally registered. It's finally got to him that Yeah, he spared no expense, but it's in the wrong places. We then cut back to the kids and Dr. Grant, and this is the one where they wake up with the brachiosaurs eating the leaves near them. Dr. Grant tells the kids that, yeah, they can go touch the dinosaur because here's a prehistoric animal that he's never interacted with. Oh, no, sorry, he did. He'd molested a triceratops earlier on. So he gives the kids permissions to touch the dinosaurs, even though he doesn't know what kind of things live on their skin or how the dinosaurs are going to react. You know, he's just acting like, we know he's an expert. He digs bones. Does he really know about dinosaur behavior? Has the guessed it? Maybe not. But
yeah. If you had only ever discovered human skeletons and never met a real human, you would have no idea that we were out here doing all kinds of crazy shit.
And then the dinosaur sneezes on poor Lex as she tries to reach out the dinosaur, and they laugh at her. Which, again, to me, especially like this post-COVID time where you don't know what that dinosaur's got. You're assuming it's a cold. You don't know what disease it has. And now it's just snotted all over a person. You know, we could have like a new super strength virus spreading amongst the human population as a result of this dinosaur sneeze.
Imagine if, because you know, like in the Jurassic World sequels, like now in the newest movie coming out, supposedly the dinosaurs have conquered the whole world or something crazy like that, right? And so what if Jurassic Park was the source of not only the dinosaurs conquering the world, but also the zombie plague that wiped out the rest of humanity?
And it all started with this one brachiosaurus that sneezed on Lex and gave her like dinosyphilis or something like that. I don't know. Then, as they're making their way towards the visitor center, they notice some dino eggs that had hatched. This has basically confirmed to them that life has indeed found a way.
I knew it was right. I knew it all along.
The crazy bastard was right. Yeah, so the dinosaurs apparently now in a single-sex environment, it turns out that some of them, like Dr. Grant with his seatbelt buckles, have found a way to make two female ends work.
Nice callback. Nice callback.
By the use of frog DNA. Honestly, this frog DNA is messed up, right? Like, apparently the frog DNA is what's caused dinosaurs to be able to change sex now. It gave the T-Rex its dumb visibility thing, and let's just assume it caused the Dilophosaurus to spit acid as well.
Yeah, like, what is going on in this movie? What is this movie really about? Like, it has much wider implications now. Now we know that they're actively mutating dinosaurs.
Well, that's the thing that gets me, because when you think about it, it's a case of he's built this park of dinosaurs, but they're not real dinosaurs. It's like going to a classic car show and half the car's been replaced with like some stuff that people have cobbled together in like their garage or something, or their shed.
Yeah.
It's a case of, oh, here's this classic Ferrari, and we've stuck Ford lights on the front because we couldn't find the headlights, and we've put a Volkswagen steering wheel on the inside because that's what we found. That's essentially what these dinosaurs are. They're not proper restorations. They're some weird mangled hybrid.
Just cheap knockoffs, like a fake Mona Lisa.
That's exactly it. But one thing that really gets me in this scene is, obviously Dr. Grant is excited by this whole breakthrough and everything else, but he picks up the eggshell, and in the middle of a conversation, he just takes a big sniff out of the eggshell.
Yeah, he's like, well, some West African frogs have been known to spontaneously switch sexes in an all same-sex environment.
It's like what someone with a foot fetish would do with a woman's shoe, right? Like, it's just it's very creepy. It's like, kids, get behind that tree. Dr. Grant needs some time alone with the eggshells. Oh, yeah.
What valuable information is he getting from smelling these empty eggshells? That's what I want to know.
I don't know. I think it's a kink. I think he's like, kids, we need to take some of these back. Don't ask why. It's for research. It's for research. That's what it's for.
Maybe it's like some kind of special special drug that paleontologists
like
like catnip for paleontologists, and he's like, we could grind this up into a fine powder.
Yeah, selling dino egg on the black market or something like that. Kinky Grant. Okay, so next we're back in the control room, and it starts off with shirtless Malcolm lying around breathing heavily, which I don't know why. Why does that scene even exist?
I don't know. I think that's the only way that Goldblum can do it. I don't think he knows any other way.
Even as a director choice, because everyone else is having this conversation about what to do, with the dinosaurs and the kids and everything else and Dr. Grant. And rather than focusing on them straight away, it's a case of, we'll focus on Ian Malcolm, who's breathing heavily with his shirt undone, just staring at them.
I think he's trying to recreate the front cover of Michael Jackson's Thriller album.
As you do in situations like this,
I mean, doesn't everybody?
And I think we discussed, I think what's great about this is, I think it was for the 30th anniversary where in London they built that really horrendous statue next to London Bridge.
It was awful as well. It looked nothing like him. It looked like it had been done by like primary school kids or something.
But someone did a meme where they had that picture of Ian Malcolm with his shirt undone, and then they had they photoshopped on Alan Grant when he's like on the Triceratops, but on Ian Malcolm's belly. It's just beautiful. So they're discussing options for the park, and I think they basically have come to the conclusion that the only way to resolve everything to cancel out everything Dennis Nedry has done is to restart the systems. Arnold then goes to switch off the power and switches it back on, and the lights don't turn on. Everything is still off, apart from the computer where there's a little blinking system ready light, which means that they're ready to reboot the systems. I think we missed out a whole bunch of stuff about where they talk about lines of code and how Nedry's got like 2 million lines of code that they have to go through, which is
and you missed the ha you didn't say the magic word. And he's like, I hate this hacker crap or something. And then he because he has that really famous line where he says, I can't get Jurassic Park back online without Dennis Nedry. And they're like, where the hell is he gone?
Well done, Hammond. You made your entire theme park stroke zoo dependent on one IT guy.
I mean, that tracks.
Oh, damn it, Hammond. Yeah, so this is where they decide that someone has to go out to the maintenance shed to switch on the circuit breakers. That's where I think Arnold now is excited because the system's rebooted, and they just let him run out.
He just goes, he's like, I'll just deal with this. I'll do it all my damn self. Fine.
And the thing that gets me, right? So as we find out later in the movie, he doesn't come back. So they sent out like a search party for him. And that's when there's like this scene where Robert Muldoon takes his key, goes like to this locker, opens up this locker and pulls out all these weapons. And you think, maybe someone should have done that earlier on. They're just, I mean, they don't know exactly which animals are free, but the T-Rex is out there. Some of the things have been switched off. You let the poor dude head off to the maintenance shed without any weapons or anything.
Yeah, they're strapped in that control room.
While the rest of you just hang around. Don't even bother telling him, hey, we've got a stash of weapons that you might want to take to protect yourself. Or if you don't know how to use these weapons, maybe one of us who does know how to use this can go. I mean, where's Muldoon in this situation? Surely he lives for this kind of shit.
This is his moment to shine.
You're the gamekeeper. You sent the freaking IT guy to flick some circuit breakers on. There's no need for him to do that.
This is what you were born for, Robert. Come on.
Screw you all. I am blaming. So I was a big Robert Muldoon fan, but after going through that scene again, I've decided that I hate Muldoon. I believe Muldoon is the cause of Arnold's death because.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, sending You've got this really fit and athletic gamekeeper who's, African safari guy. He knows everything about everything that can kill you.
He's flashing his thighs everywhere, right?
Yeah, he's flashing his hairy man thighs everywhere. And no, we'll send the middle-aged
IT guy.
IT guy who smokes 40 a day.
Right? How's he going to run from something? I'm surprised he managed to get down those stairs without keeling over. I mean, it's just stupid. And surely, the whole point is that you've already lost one IT guy. It might make sense to keep the only other IT guy you have around there in the park to work the computers.
Yeah, because nobody else knows about it. And now both the IT guys are dead.
God damn it, people. Oh. Yeah, we forgot the classic hold on to your butts scene, which is the most infamous, and that was Arnold's final shining moment before he was sent to his death.
Hold on to your butts. Yeah.
And then we get to the Gallimimus scene where the kids and Dr. Grant are out in the fields and they're looking at these Gallimimus flocking like birds, and Alan Grant is again completely obsessed by this whole dinosaur thing.
It does have a really cool little line where he's like, see how they move like a flock of birds? And then Timmy's like, they're flocking this way. It's like, let's run.
There's also the great bit where the T-Rex jumps out and picks off of the Gallimimus, and they're hiding behind the tree log, and they kind of duck to escape, and Timmy's just in awe watching the T-Rex.
Oh yeah, and I think Grant drags him away, and he's like, so much blood.
Yeah, so then we get back to the bunker where Arnold hasn't returned because I mean, like we just said, there's many reasons why he probably would never come back. Anyway,
the odds were never that high.
If the dinosaurs didn't get him, his smoking habit would have done. That's basically what it comes down to. And there's a great line by Dr. Malcolm where he goes, if the Pirates of the Caribbean break down, the pirates don't eat the tourists. Which is just genius.
It's great as well. I meant to mention this in the previous episode, but if you look at what they're wearing, they've dressed Malcolm in all black and Hammond's wearing all white, which sort of gives you that juxtaposition of Malcolm's very much the critic, and Hammond's the optimist who thinks it's all going to turn out great.
Yeah, I mean, the outfits are all kind of iconic. There's a lot of things that mention how Nedry has similar clothing to Chunk from the Goonies. So yes, his Hawaiian shirt in the scene with Dodgson is very similar to the one that is it Chunk, the name of the kid?
Chunk, yeah. Is it possible that that's what happened to Chunk? He grew up and got a job working IT at a dinosaur zoo.
You laughed at me in the previous episode when I said I wanted to see a movie about Nedry's backstory. You're not laughing now, are you?
I tell you what, if it turned out that he was Chunk as a kid, I would definitely watch that movie.
And Sloth becomes Ian Malcolm.
I take it all back.
Arnold's disappeared, and they're all getting a bit antsy because the power's not back. Yeah, the power's not back on. They don't care that Arnold's disappeared, but the damn power isn't back on.
Rude.
Muldoon, kicks into action and says, "You can't just stroll down the road, which is exactly what they made Arnold do."
Yeah.
Screw you, Muldoon. Seriously. Yeah, and that's when he brings out all his weapons, and that's when Ellie says that I'm going with him, and Hammond makes that sexist comment.
Oh yeah, and then she has this great line where she's like, we can discuss sexism and gender politics in crisis situations when I get back, John, all right? Or something like that. Just amazing.
Now that Muldoon is armed, they step outside and notice that the raptor pen has been compromised, and that the raptors have most likely escaped.
Yeah, this is when it's crunch time. So it's this is, oh shit, this has got real. The raptors are out.
And this is where Muldoon starts. I swear he must be on something, because this is where he goes, oh, we're being hunted already. Like, he knows now.
Yeah.
He's aware. It's like he's one with the raptor. Oh, Muldoon. So he tells Ellie to run and go for it, because he can't do it anymore. He can't go with her because they know the raptors are onto them, and he must stay back and hunt them.
His voice is so... We're being hunted. It's just really creepy. It's so cool. No, we can't, because we're being hunted. It's so good.
There's that bit where like he takes off his hat, like respect. Like it's like raptors.
Right, I'm going to need to put all my attention on this, and if I wear a hat, it's going to distract me.
This thing is like, this is what he's been waiting for, right? He's been waiting for these raptors to escape so he can finally face them one-on-one.
Yeah, this is the ultimate test of his entire life's work. His skills. This is it.
Nah, I mean, realistically, I think he's always been against the park, so I think it's more of a case of, yeah, he'd rather not do this, but this is the situation he's in.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
Indeed. And then Ellie makes her way down into the maintenance shed, and that's that whole thing where Hammond can't read maps and keeps sending her in the wrong direction.
Yeah. She makes a break for it, doesn't she? She leaves Muldoon behind. She just...
And she gets in, she's lost inside the maintenance shed, and that's when Ian Malcolm takes over the reins and tells her to follow the pipes and stuff like that. And she finally makes it to the circuit breakers, where she's going down each of them one by one, dramatically calling out the name. And the reason for this is because right at the bottom is the perimeter fence. And we find out that the kids and Grant are at the perimeter fence. And there's that whole bit where Grant does that fake out scene with the electric bits.
Yeah, he throws a stick at it, doesn't he? And then he pretends to like grab it and
get electrocuted, which actually did make me jump the first time I watched that.
Oh, he's like, oh, it's not a convincing scream though, is it? It's obvious that he's messing around.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of sorry, I just wanted to say it's kind of messed up when you consider what these poor kids have just been through. Like, he's their only adult caretaker in this whole crazy world now, and he's decided to make them think that he's dead.
I mean, the thing is, he is awkward with kids. He sniffs eggs. He's not a great human being, right? So what can we expect from him, really?
He's trying. He's trying.
He's not quite there. There's moments where he makes a really good like father figure. He's very calming to Timmy when he admits that he's puked up in the car, and he's there trying to comfort them. But yeah, there's lots of things where you kind of go, okay, you don't quite understand how this works. But I suppose that is in character, you know.
He's more like the crazy uncle than like a dad or anything.
I think that would be a better role for him.
Yeah, just the crazy uncle. He just shows up at your wedding, just acting weird.
Handing out dinosaur eggs in like little bags from his jacket. Yeah.
Oh, it's Uncle Alan again.
With his freaking aphrodisiac.
Back from one of his digs. Sorry. Oh, carry on.
So we have that whole thing where the kids are trying to race across to the other side of the fence, and Lex and Grant make it over, but Timmy's taking his time getting down. Everything's going fine until the warning light starts flashing to indicate that the fences are going back on, because Ellie's making her way down the list of fences from the circuit breakers. We get to the stage where she gets to the bottom, flicks the last switch, which is for the perimeter fence, just as Dr. Grant is counting down to 3 for Timmy to jump off the fence.
Oh yeah, he's like 1, 2, and then it goes blam. And he it's like cartoonish. He just like flies off the fence.
Poor Timmy with his, shocked hair and everything else. That's which again, Dr. Grant, if you hadn't been messing around earlier on, Timmy would have probably made it.
Yeah, and he has to do CPR on him now, doesn't he?
It does. which thankfully works, and Timmy manages to get out number 3.
3. Yeah, Paul Lex is just having the worst time. Now she thinks her brother's dead. So she's having a nervous
twice in a
breakdown.
night, like twice in a 24-hour period, right? You know.
So I hope John Hammond paid for therapy for these poor kids.
Yeah, if you're not going to spare any expense, that's what you need to do. Chuck the money at. Well, to be fair, he's probably fending off all the lawsuits now.
Yeah. Even more lawsuits. Forever.
Well, actually, no, because only the lawyer died, right? No, Dr. Arnold as well, which we'll get to.
And Nedry.
And Muldoon. Okay, yeah, that's quite a few people.
No, it's not nobody.
Wow, I totally miscounted that. Okay, so we cut back to the control room, not the control room, the maintenance shed, where Ellie's finished switching off all the circuit breakers, and the raptor bursts out from behind the pipes. And
terrifying.
Yeah, and then she runs away, closes like a chain link door fence thing, and rushes to a back wall, absolutely scared. And that's where the scene where the arm falls down on top of her shoulder.
She's like, "Oh, Mr. Arnold," and then she turns around and it's just his severed forearm. which is really kind of like that campy 80s horror movie style.
So apparently there was also a fake leg as well. And I think the idea was that she trips over his leg, and that's why she ends up stumbling like for the rest of the movie.
Oh, okay,
that's why she has the limp. Sorry, that's why. Yeah, it's because of Dr. Arnold's leg. But apparently, what they were going to film like his whole death scene, but it didn't happen because of the whole storm that hit the island. So they kind of had to rush through that whole thing. And
yeah, I do think it works better this way though, because it's more kind of like, it's kind of more shocking when you see the arm and you're like, oh. I mean, we all knew he was dead anyway. As soon as he walked out that door.
Yeah, as we described earlier, he was dead man walking, basically. I think in the book there's more of like a stalking scene. I think it's more like the Freddy Krueger movies, where, you know, obviously he's walking amongst the pipes and all like these metal railings and stuff in the maintenance shed, and there's this raptor that's kind of chasing him through it.
Yeah,
which I think, yeah. If you had time to kind of do that, it's like with everything else, you know, in books, there's so many like subplots and extra details that are really good to read, but probably don't need to be in a movie. Yeah. So we find that poor Mr. Arnold has died, and then we go back to Muldoon now, who's stalking a raptor. This is another classic scene where he spots one of the raptors just standing there, chilling. Muldoon's like, "Mahaha, I've got you now." He pulls out his gun that he's got, and didn't he already like cock and load his gun beforehand?
I can't remember if it's loaded, but I remember him pulling out like the is it the stock or whatever it is? He's like putting up the sights and stuff. He's like very slowly setting it up. I don't know anything about guns. Sorry, I'm English. But he's like very slowly like getting his gun ready and not making any sudden moves. It's peak Muldoon. He's like drawing on every ounce of experience that he has in his wise old head to like, how the hell am I going to get out of this situation?
Unfortunately, though, he lines up the shot and we see a raptor head pop out by his side.
Yes.
And, you know, what most of us do is probably turn around and shoot the raptor that's, you know, facing us. But he decides that, you know, Ian Malcolm's got all the one-liners so far. It's about time he got one in as well. And delivers his famous "clever girl" before he gets jumped on.
Yes. And this is the payoff for Alan Grant explaining at the beginning of the movie how raptors attack. And you get to see it in action.
Which is, again, you know, this is why Hammond should have had paleontologists involved in the first place. If Dr. Grant had this information, he could have shared this with everyone. I think in the book, Muldoon actually survives, though, right? He manages to, he's a bit more smarter, and he's one of the survivors at the end of the trip.
I don't remember his character much in the book, but I do think he deserves to survive. He's one of the few who deserves to make it through this.
Well, if there's anyone, and I think it makes more sense because in the book he's kind of studied raptors. He knows they're dangerous, and that's the thing about that whole scene is, it's a trap. He knows they're smart, clever creatures, so you'd expect him to be more cautious. And then the whole one-liner thing as well. It just feels a bit like a cheap death kind of thing, because not enough people have died in this movie, so we needed to kill a few more off. Why couldn't it have been Hammond? Just kill off Hammond. They would have made everyone happy.
Like in the book. I believe in the book he gets eaten by Compsognathus, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
Which we don't see any compies in this film, which is sad because they're, cute and small.
Yeah, and I think that was a nice thing in the book as well, because you've got these small chicken-like dinosaurs, which are a bit of a joke in a way, but they end up being the demise of Hammond, which I think is great, because doesn't he like slip and fall down a cliff or something like that, and then
he does something dumb and falls over, like breaks his limbs or something, and then he's laying there helpless, and that's when the compies come in and start nibbling on him. And I think in the book as well it says that they have this chemical in their saliva that puts you to sleep, basically.
Oh, okay.
And the book actually starts out with a scene where a family is in Central America somewhere, and they're on a beach, and a little girl gets bitten by a Compsognathus on this random tourist beach.
That's how it starts off, isn't it? Oh,
yeah, that's how the book begins. Yeah, that's the first scene.
No, I need to go back and read the book. Doing this has kind of got me excited about reading it again.
It is a phenomenal book. Yeah.
We then go back to the compound where the kids and Grant have made it, and they're chowing away on the buffet, which who knows how long that's been sat there. And what I'm really impressed is how that jelly, given that it's probably been out of a fridge for more than 24 hours now, is still perfectly fine and
very wobbly. Yeah, it's very wobbly. This is where they're like stuffing their faces with ice cream and jelly and stuff, and then she starts to shiver and shake with the jelly wobbling around everywhere because she sees the silhouette of a raptor like outside the building.
Oh, so we did have a discussion about how many raptors were in the movie in the previous episode.
Yes.
And I think you're right that it might be 3, because there were the 2 that attacked Muldoon, and then there was the one that attacked Ellie in the maintenance shed, right?
Yes. I only remember in the kitchen scene, I'm sure there's only 2 raptors.
There's only 2 in the kitchen scene, yeah. But I think one of them's stuck in the maintenance shed, right?
Yes, you're probably right, yeah. But then wait a second. So that means one of them's in the...
Yes, sorry, because one of them's in the maintenance shed, 2 of them are out. When they go into the kitchen scene that we're going to talk about, Timmy locks one of them in the fridge at the back, the refrigerator. Yeah. So there's only one that comes out to attack him, and then the other one comes through the door, which I'm guessing is the one in the maintenance shed.
Yes, and then at the end, the famous scene with the T-Rex where they attack the T-Rex, there's only 2 of them because the other one's stuck in the freezer.
Yes. I think we've tracked all the raptors in Jurassic Park.
I think we've just explained the whole rest of the film. We can wrap it up right now.
Good night, everybody. Well, we have to go to the kitchen scene, don't we?
Yes, we do. Yeah, so they know a raptor's coming. They run into the kitchen to hide.
And the kitchen is spotless with some absolutely fantastic stainless steel furnishings that are absolutely perfect, which will come into play later on in... in this whole scene. Spared no expense on the kitchen because that's actually flashier than the security system at Jurassic Park.
We just didn't hire anybody to use it. We just built this expensive kitchen.
Didn't Alessandro use it to make his Chilean sea bass?
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, Alessandro. One guy.
Just... But what a guy he is. See, I think there should be like an alternate version where we follow Alessandro and Dr. Harding, who was with the Triceratops.
The minor characters.
Yeah, exactly.
I do hope Alessandro made it safely off the island.
Yeah, because we can't have the Chilean sea bass recipe die with him.
Okay.
That'd be a loss to the world. Okay, so now we've got to the kitchen scene, and so it opens the door, comes in, and that's when it makes the goose sound, right? That's when the dinosaur makes the goose sound.
Yes, the goose sound when it's stalking. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
calls its buddy over, and the other raptor turns up, and this is when they start playing a game of cat and mouse with Lex and Tim. This was like the big payoff scene, right? This was the key scene in the movie, which I kind of feel hasn't held up as well as some of the other ones. And partly I think it's a reliance on CGI, which
I can see what you mean.
it doesn't quite have the same kind of impact. I feel for me the favorite scenes are with the T-Rex, so the bit where it breaks out from the paddock and then the Jeep chasing scene.
Yeah, I think part of it as well is that in the T-Rex scenes it's very dark and it's raining and it's more sinister as well. It's more creepy.
Yeah, it's more atmospheric. I think here the main thing is them running away from the raptors, you know.
Yeah.
Although there is that great bit where Lex hides in one of the cupboards or whatever it is.
Yes, yeah, it's like a little cupboard with a pull down.
And that, to me, is still a great scene where the raptor thinks it's seen Lex, but turns out it's just her reflection.
Yeah, and it barrels into the cupboard. And then Timmy has his, he stands with the freezer door open and moves out of the way at the last second, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think that's something which kind of takes the edge off this whole scene, because Timmy goes between hobbling and then sprinting, and it's a case of, which one is it? Are you okay? You're not okay? And also the way the whole edits are done for the fridge scene, it didn't quite make sense to me until I read the book. And in the book, it kind of explains how he runs into the freezer, slides on it, and the way he slides makes him come around the door, and then the raptor obviously like comes chasing after. But then Tim realizes it's a good chance for him to kind of lock it into the freezer. So it makes more sense in the book, just a bit weird with the way it's edited, that you don't really see everything going on. It's super quick and all over the place.
Yeah, it is a little bit slapstick. The way he's like, whoops, you missed me. And it's like, whoops, falling over. And then he like closes the door on it, and you get that amazing like that shot of Lex running with her arms stretched out, just screaming bloody murder, like like just into the door.
Oh, it's genius. And so they run out of the kitchen back into the main lobby of the visitor center, and that's when Ellie, who's caught up with Dr. Grant now, come in, and the kids tell them about the raptor, and they run to the control room. This is the bit where they get into the control room, and Dr. Alan Grant puts the gun down for some reason, tries to lock the door. It doesn't lock because everything's electronic in Jurassic Park for some bizarre reason. Why not have a manual lock as well? It's not a hard thing to implement. And that's when the raptor tries to burst through. Ellie goes over to help Dr. Grant and doesn't pick up the gun. No.
But then she's like trying to grab it with her foot or something. Like, it's like, why don't you just pick it up on your way to the door?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's the thing about, why don't one of the kids hand the gun to him?
Yeah, because kids are just stood around doing nothing at this point.
But apparently the reason for that is that Spielberg has a thing where he doesn't want kids to handle guns in movies.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could have had Tim kick it to them or something like that, or just put it into their reach. Because, like you're saying, they're trying to grab it with their foot and they're almost there. I know he doesn't want kids to pick up guns, but surely just a little nudge of the gun towards them might...
Yeah. Not okay. Give it a good old football punt. Like, just...
So while all this commotion is going on with the door, Lex spots the computer and goes... It's a Unix system.
Oh, yeah, this is your time to shine, Lex.
And then we get that amazing graphic on the screen. So the interesting thing about it is that I think we had this discussion previously where we kind of joke about fake computer interfaces, the way that every time you see a hacker in a movie, they have all these fancy graphics on like multiple monitors, and they sat there and they launch a virus, and you can see the virus propagating throughout the world. And you see like screens with like numbers scrolling up as money goes into their accounts and stuff like that. You know, it's just bar charts rising up as they become super rich, you know, all this kind of stuff, which is not real. And it's the same kind of thing in this, you know, we're looking at this whole interface where you move around in this 3D space, clicking blocks or buildings or something to get to like files.
I don't know. What is that supposed to be a representation of? Like a 3D representation of your hard drive or something? What is
Yes.
it?
So apparently, I thought all this time it was just something done for the movie. It turns out it was a real thing.
No way.
So yeah, it was something that was bundled with the computers they used were made by a company called Silicon Graphics.
Mm.
And Silicon Graphics provided the computers that did all like the CGI and rendering for Jurassic Park. So they were well known back in the 90s for all the special effects stuff. And apparently this interface was a demo application. It was a file navigator for the IRIX system, which is the
Oh.
Unix-like system. So they actually used that for the movie. So it is real in a way.
Well, that's better than nothing. I'll take it. I'll take it.
Shame it's so goddamn slow. Like, essentially, what she's doing is she's just clicking through folders until she finds the file to lock the doors. Which, okay, I know she doesn't know the system, but it's a few clicks and she gets there. But obviously, it's drawn out for the sake of this movie, right? Where
Yeah, it's going at like 5 frames a second or something.
no wonder Nedry never got anything done. It probably took him half an hour to just get to the folder where his files were kept.
Yeah, but like in the book, didn't they? Wasn't Timmy the computer nerd in the book?
I'm not sure. I think it was always Lex, wasn't it?
Well, I feel like the ages were reversed as well. I feel like in the book, Timmy was older, if I remember correctly.
If anyone knows out there,
somebody will know.
Can you please correct us? We should have done more research. We should have actually read this before.
Nah, it's fine. It's all right.
I mean, we've watched the movie multiple times. We can't even recall everything that happened. So we definitely wouldn't have got through the book and given it a fair shot.
Yeah, we're just going off of our memories of it. So.
Yes. So just looking at the Jurassic Park fandom wiki thing, it says in the movie, the roles of Tim and Lex were partly reversed. Lex is now the older sibling and is given Tim's computer hacking skills.
Ah.
While Tim is the younger sibling, but keeps the same fascination with dinosaurs.
Ah, there you go.
So you did read the book and remember.
Yeah, I wonder if the reason they did that was because it felt like in the book they gave Tim all the cool character traits. Like he's a dinosaur nerd, he knows a lot about computers and all this kind of stuff. Whereas with Lex, like her character didn't really have anything. She was just the younger sister there along for the ride.
But I wonder if it's also to do with the casting choices, because from what I remember, the kid who plays Tim, he was promised a role by Steven Spielberg for Hook, and that didn't happen. And so he put him in this movie. And then I think we discussed about Ariana Richards and her hiring for her role. So I think given the casting choices, they probably thought, okay, well, we'll kind of switch the two around.
Yeah, and it works.
Yeah, I think in some ways the characters kind of work better. You've got the dinosaur nerd kid, and that's his thing, and then you've got her thing, which is the computer hacking stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's a nice balance, like you were saying.
So she's discovered that it's a Unix system, and both of the IT guys are dead. Now it's my time to shine.
Exactly. Oh dear. If they'd just kept Arnold alive.
So she's clacking away on the keyboard trying to figure out a way to get these doors to lock or something, or like
yes, exactly. And then eventually she hits the right application, I suppose, and the doors lock.
Yes.
And then everything is good. Then Dr. Grant goes, Mr. Hammond, the phones are working. Because now he's because now he's so happy that the phones are working. I guess they can call in the helicopter, can't they? That was the thing.
Yes. What do we see after this? I can't remember what comes immediately after this.
After this, what happens is they're celebrating, but it's too premature because the raptor realizes there's a window that it can burst through instead. So there's that bit where it moves to the window and they fire off some shots and completely miss because that's what you need in Muldoon for, I suppose. And the raptor crashes through the glass. They make a run for the air vents at the top. And they start crawling through the air vents to escape the raptor.
Yes, you're right. Yes.
Is it an air vent or they're just above the ceiling? Whatever, it's at the top, right?
Yeah, it's an air vent, yeah.
And we get another cool scene where you see the raptor looking up and the light is shining through the vents and the gaps in the vent are all DNA sequences. So you see all the
Yeah.
letters on its face, which is great.
That's cool. Yeah.
And we get one more jump scene where the raptor bursts through the top and you think it's fallen down, and then it makes one last high jump to try and get to him. They come crashing out in the main lobby, end up on the skeletons that were hanging up in the main foyer, and the raptor decides to jump at them, which causes the skeletons to fall apart, and then they start swinging around, eventually falling off, and and then the raptor starts facing off with them.
Isn't this where like some kind of rib cage or something falls on top of Tim? Tim takes so much punishment in this film.
Poor kids.
They're going to be messed up for life.
It's shocking, isn't it?
Child abuse.
So yes, they're cornered by the raptor and everything looks like it's coming to a close, and we're like, how are our heroes going to get out of this one? Is it going to be Hammond? No, it's the T-Rex, of course, that saves them.
Yeah, which they I think I remember reading somewhere that Spielberg said the T-Rex is the star of the movie. Because does this happen in the book? I don't feel like it does.
I'm not sure. How did they get out in the book then?
I don't know. I'm going to have to read it again. It's been years since I read it. But I remember, the T-Rex comes in. Doesn't he grab one of them and the other one runs and it jumps on top of him and they end up in this big...
So one of them is obviously chasing them, and then when they come crashing down, the other one comes through the door, right? So they're now...
Yes.
They're now surrounded by... Yeah, they're basically flanked by the two raptors, right?
Yes. And then one of them's about to pounce on them and the T-Rex catches it in mid-jump.
Yeah.
Like bursts through the wall and catches it mid-jump.
And the T-Rex shakes it around, chucks it away, and the other one jumps on it and starts clawing at the T-Rex.
And then that allows them to make their escape.
Yep. To a Jeep that pulls up with Hammond in it. So Hammond finally gets off his ass to do something.
Finally.
How he got Ian Malcolm on the Jeep as well, I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know. That was quick. They did that quick.
And then I think that's the bit where they hop into the Jeep and Alan Grant basically tells Hammond that he will not be endorsing his park.
Doesn't he? He says, after careful consideration, I've decided not to endorse your park. And then Hammond says, so have I.
And they finally make their way to the waiting helicopter, and then they finally make it off the island, and we have Grant with the two kids by his side because he's bonded with them. Ellie looks on smiling happily because, we've seen some character arc development and Alan Grant overcoming his hatred of children.
Yes, his hatred of children. And you see that it plays that very sort of calming, emotional, sad music while they look out the window and they see are they seagulls or something?
Pelicans, is it?
Pelicans, that's it, yes.
And I guess it's are they reminiscing about the flocking birds, kind of reminding them of the dinosaurs? Is that what it is, do you think? Some symbolism.
Yeah, it's probably just a final callback to dinosaurs evolved into birds and that's where they are now.
And we end scene. End to a bloody fantastic movie that still brings us joy and isn't as entertaining to watch as it was the first time we watched it.
Absolutely. And it's not a perfect movie as well. Like we've discussed how there are flaws with it and little slip-ups and stuff, but it's probably just one of the greatest films I've ever seen.
I agree, and I don't think the perfect movie exists. And you're right, there's so many things that once you start picking apart, it could be done differently or it could be improved. But at the same time, I think it has the right balance of action, story, drama, the horror. It's got fantastic special effects that are used liberally, but are not really wasted. They're used at the right time and generally done very well. And it's got enough character building and story. It's got enough of a plot that makes sense in some kind of way or flows in a very nice way that takes you through the journey. And like we mentioned in the first episode, it just reveals bits as it goes along that have some kind of resolution or explain something. So you never feel that something jumps out unexpectedly or a character doesn't quite behave the way they should. I mean, okay, not always. We've described some situations where that might be the case, but generally the beats of the movie are very good. But everything from that to the set designs, the way the scenes are shot, where every scene just has something about it, even if it's just people sitting down having lunch, the dialogue, the way the scenes are shot, there's always something going on that just makes it fascinating to watch. And props to the whole team and the way they've approached this movie.
Yeah, and it was sort of triggered like a revolution in CGI in movies. I remember reading somewhere that the average Hollywood movie now has something like 2,000 to 3,000 CGI shots in it. Jurassic Park had like 50 something.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing how much it exploded after this movie.
But I think that's also the sad thing, because like we talked about earlier, Jurassic Park has that right balance between CGI and real physical animatronics and things. And there's certain scenes that, like when we talked about the T-Rex blasting through the plexiglass cover on the Explorer, where those reactions from the kids were real. They knew the scene was going to happen, but they weren't expecting the T-Rex to be so forceful, and it actually broke the plexiglass, which is why you get, such a huge reaction from them. And it's the same with things like the Star Wars movies, where the original ones, you had people out in the desert actually going through these kinds of things, and then you compare that to the prequels where they're just in a studio reacting to green screens, and it's not the same thing. You don't get the best out of the actors in that kind of way.
And it is interesting as well, because Hammond uses that line of like, he was bored of it all being an illusion. He wanted to give them something they could reach out and touch. And that's kind of what it is now. Like nowadays, CGI movies, it's an illusion. But back in Jurassic Park, they managed to make something that looked real, that you could actually, touch with your hands.
It's pretty meta, isn't it? The way
it is.
It.
It's an incredible film, though. Probably changed my life when I saw it.
Agreed. We haven't really mentioned the score that much either, which again is just another classic John Williams score that is memorable and has all the right emotion behind each of the scenes. Every piece that's written for the movie fits the scene perfectly and does its job conveying what's going on, and it's memorable at the same time.
It is perfect, and it's recognizable enough that it's probably one of the most iconic film scores of all time.
So I think that's it. That's our review of Jurassic Park.
It's been a hell of a journey. I feel like we've been going for a long, long time.
We've gone longer than the movie, actually.
yeah, right. We could have watched Jurassic Park twice.
In fact, that would have been a better use of your time. Go watch Jurassic Park. Don't listen to us anymore.
Absolutely do go watch it.
So yeah, Gavin, can you let the audience know where they can find us?
Yes, if you're on Twitter and Facebook, it's at High on Retro. If you're on Instagram, it's at High on Retro Pod. And you can send us an email for any reason you desire at highonretropod@gmail.com.
Thank you. And yeah, we'll join you for another episode where we'll start to delve into other things. We're going beyond movies. We also want to cover things like video games, cartoons, and toy franchises as well. So watch the space for more retro stuff. Again, if you have any suggestions, then please leave us a comment, send us a message, send us an email, and yeah, we'll try and get around to it if we can. And again, if there's something that we've incorrectly referenced or we've got something wrong, then please let us know. We strive to improve our knowledge on these things, so we'll happily admit fault if we've made a mistake somewhere.
Well, you will. I will defend my position to the death.
Even if it's wrong, even if the evidence out there says otherwise.
Especially if it's wrong.
All right. From both of us, have a good one, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Cheerio.